a work of art is, I guess, first of all, you describe or you define what art is, and then you come up with a reason for saying, well, this is a work of art, and any work of art that a non-white person is involved in, whatever the art is, depending on what you call art, A-R-T, does it help in some way, directly, indirectly, to cause a person to think, speak, and or act to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Why a work of art? Well, why not a work of art? Since everything that a prisoner of war and all non-white people in the system of white supremacy are prisoners of war, anything that a prisoner of war does is supposed to be designed with it in mind to replace that prison system, that bogus prison system, that prisoner of war system, that system of racism, with a better system. And a better system, since racism is all about non-justice, is to replace that non-just system with a just system. Justice meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that's whether it's a work of art or in science and medicine, or if you're studying history, you should be thinking about immediately if someone mentions the word history, like this is supposed to be Black History Month, and you're going to show a work of art in Black History Month, you should be able to look at that so-called work of art, if that's what is required, something that you look at. So when you look at it, you say, now, how does this help me to think about replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice? Otherwise, why are you calling it a work of art? Even if it's just a painting of a tree, it's supposed to inspire you in some way to change from what is now your circumstances to circumstances that are much better, or the way that they should have been in the first place. Because all interaction between people now on this planet in the system of white supremacy is something that needs changing from what it is to what it should be. And that is a system of justice, which no one who is breathing now has ever experienced. Because since the beginning of white supremacy, for sure, you can't have white supremacy and justice on the same planet at the same time. So no one has ever experienced a system that guaranteed that no person was mistreated and guaranteed that every person that needed constructive help got it at the time and place that he or she needed it. So a work of art, in answer to the question, should help directly or indirectly to cause a person to think, speak, and or act to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Otherwise, what's the point in having that work of art? Mm-hmm. Some people say, well, you have art for art's sake. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. I mean, art's sake. Well, what is art's sake? It raises another question. Art's sake for doing what? And let the person who raises that question answer the question. Because I've always found in most of recorded history that I've looked, almost all of it is about some type of fighting. That's the point that most of history that's been picked out to talk about. Great warriors. Most of the people that I was taught about in my 8th grade class were people who were in what they call the warrior class. Mm-hmm. That made up history. I was taught about a play called Macbeth. The only thing I remember about the play Macbeth, I remember 2 lines, even today. The only thing I remember about Shakespeare's play, Macbeth, a very prominent play that they have reenactments of it on the stages all over the place.
Yes.
You know, the book is, Shakespeare's writings on Macbeth. I mean, it's been passed down through generations. I only remember 2 lines from Macbeth. One is Macbeth, Macbeth, beware Macduff. Now, why is Macbeth bewaring of Macduff? It's because evidently Macduff is going to do Macbeth some harm. All right? So that tells me something right there. Why is it that I remember that as one of the lines from Macbeth, one of the 2 lines? Now, what's the other line I remember? I think it's from Macbeth, but is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand? That's the quote. Is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand? A dagger? Now, what is a dagger used for? Well, a dagger is usually not used for building anything. A dagger is usually used to destroy a person.
Killing people.
Killing people. Now, why is it that out of everything in Macbeth, even to this day, 2018, and I finished grade school, elementary school, and high school back in the 1940s, all right? Why is it that that's the only thing I remember from Macbeth? It's because the whole environment of history, as taught to me, was about killers. Julius Caesar was a mass killer. He was known to be a great, general. Not just an emperor. Not an emperor that built things, but an emperor that destroyed things for the most part. He built to destroy. And there was another one, a great general, that they told me about, taking up prime time in the classroom, Alexander the Great. And they told me that Alexander the Great conquered so many lands and killed so many people that when he finally got to a place that presumably was North Africa, where a city was named after him called Alexandria, I think, that he looked and saw the desert. If I recall correctly, one of my teachers said, Alexander the Great, a young general, he was very young, sat down and cried, looking out at the desert, because he said there were no more worlds to conquer. It didn't look like there's anybody out there. So you can't conquer people if they don't exist. I don't think he went far enough into the desert to find the people. Mm-hmm. But just looking out at what he saw was a desert, he said, well, I don't think there's anybody out there. So if there's nobody out there, there's no point in me going there, because what I do is kill people. I conquer people. I destroy things. So it must not be out there anything for me to destroy. And then young Alexander the Great sat down and cried.
Wow.
According to what the teachers told me. So all I have ever been taught about history is about all of the great people, General Patton, General Grant, General Eisenhower, Adolf Hitler, General Montgomery, were people who were in the killing business. All right? And these were the heroes. Now, every now and then, somebody will mention somebody like George Washington Carver or Jonas Salk with the Salk vaccine. vaccine, they said that a man named Jonas Salk invented something that cured polio, if I recall correctly. Sometimes I get things mixed up, the names and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
But I think that that's the person's name. But I think more people remember Julius Caesar than remember Jonas Salk. I think Julius Caesar is made more of a historical hero than Jonas Salk.
For killing.
Yes. There are a lot of doctors, that cured people of things, a lot of scientists whose names I will never know. I'll say, well, who came up with this type of thing or this type of thing? And somebody say, well, Dr. So-and-so. I never heard that doctor's name until I asked about it. But I will hear about all the great killers all the time because they keep making movies about them.
Yeah.
Hercules, somebody who's in the killing business, everybody who has a sword. You go in any city and you look at the statues. General Robert E. Lee, somebody who is a killer, somebody who's known to kill people, okay? And taking up prime real estate, building expensive statues, sometimes with people that don't have shelter at the base of the statue in a tent. Now, they don't have a place to stay, but that statue costs a lot of money. How come you couldn't spend that money giving that person a shelter? Doesn't have on a stitch of clothes, but got a sword. In place of what? The phallus.
Wow.
Presuming Oscar was a male.
Yes.
All right. That's what they call a masculine name. So presuming that Oscar is a male, he has the sword in front of his sexual organs, which means, hey, this is the real deal. My sexual organs reproduce people, but this sword kills people. Think about that.